Hello everyone, this is ICBs here and today we're going to be talking about Loki Season 2 Episode 6 and well, you're probably going to be surprised when you hear me say this, but if you've been watching my recent videos, Loki is kind of good. It ended on a good note, surprisingly. And maybe it's not surprising for you, but it is definitely surprising for me because I, who has been watching Marvel content, I usually expect Marvel shows to get good towards the end, but that never really happens. That was especially true for Secret Invasion. That show remained bad from beginning to end. It didn't get any better, but Loki somehow got really good. And if you watched my review of the last episode, my main criticism for that episode was that I felt like that Loki was stalling, and I definitely criticized a lot that Marvel is just not innovating enough and that the story is not progressing enough. That is not true for episode 6. Episode 6 feels like it's cut from a completely different cloth. It really drives the plot forward. There is a lot of momentum in this episode. Unlike the previous episodes felt like they were really stalling. The story wasn't really going anywhere, and you could say that maybe it's because it's a show or anything like that, but you know what, I've watched Daredevil, I've watched Jessica Jones. It wasn't a problem with those shows. With those shows, every episode felt like it was progressing the overall plot of the show forward. I didn't felt like that with Loki. With Loki, it was like kind of a stick in the mud. It wasn't really going forward too much, but with episode 6 that all changes completely, and I just kind of wish that the whole entire season of Loki season 2 had that same kind of momentum that episode 6 had. And boy oh boy, when speaking about momentum, this show or this episode in particular was absolutely amazing. There are definitely some things that I still have to talk about because you know I am a critic of Marvel, so you can't really expect anything else from me. We are going to definitely get there, but there are a lot of good things, so let's talk about the good things first. In my last review, I predicted that Loki will somehow be able to save the TVA, and then the Marvel will end this show somehow referring to Kang or the future appearance of Kang. I was kind of right, or in a sense I was absolutely wrong, because Loki isn't really able to save the TVA in a way that I thought it would. Because remember when I said that Marvel is afraid to innovate? Well, they did innovate it in this episode, because Loki was able to save TVA, but not in a way that I imagined. Loki had to literally sacrifice himself to do that, and I was wrong about this show ending in and referring anything to Kang, because they didn't really do that. In fact, there isn't any post-credit scene that could be referring to any feature of Marvel, so that's really interesting for me. And yeah, I mean, Loki living through centuries and just going back and forth again and again trying to make this whole thing work, it was amazing. And Loki just going through the entirety of Loki could have probably gone as far back as the MCU and maybe the Avengers as well, but maybe they didn't really have the budget for that. But it was still interesting to see Loki go back and forth and just try everything that he could to save the TVA. And his conversations with Kang the Conqueror were just goddamn amazing. I loved those, and man, I am living for those. I know that I said that I wasn't a big fan of this iteration of Kang, but he's definitely growing on me, I'm not going to lie. But there is one thing that kind of is funny, but it does bother me a little bit, that Loki was unable to save the TV after learning quantum physics for literally centuries. And I'm not a quantum physician, or I don't know anything about quantum physics, but I watched this show up until episode 5, and I literally figured this out, that universes are in Marvel Cinematic Universes are expanding at an infinite rate. So even if you increase the capacity of the temporal loom, it's not really going to save the thing. Maybe it's going to be a temporary fix to give them some time to think about something and maybe come up with a solution. But again, universes are expanding at an infinite rate, so increasing the throughput of the temporal loom is not really going to be a permanent solution. And I could have told you that, but Loki literally had to spend absolute centuries, and he could not figure it out until he was finally at that moment, and he was really surprised. Oh my god, the timelines are infinite. I don't know what to do. So yeah, that was a bit funny. So yeah, I've already mentioned that this episode is good, and I'm definitely curious to see where the future of this season or this franchise would go. But there is one thing that is absolutely bothering me, and Marvel does this thing without any explanation. I wanted to mention this thing in the review of the last episode, but then I decided that I should probably wait for the last episode to come out, because maybe Marvel would give any explanation for that, but Marvel didn't, so I'm going to talk about it. And that is that why did the universe explode or basically turn into spaghetti if the temporal loom doesn't exist? And it doesn't make any sense, and Marvel doesn't really give an explanation to that. So what I'm going to be talking about goes back to the chicken and egg theory. So I'm going to try to draw something so that you guys can better understand. So as you guys can see over here, that this is the universe in its natural form before Kang existed, or before anything existed, right? So this universe is chaotic, timelines are branching literally everywhere, and then Kang comes along and he's like, well, this is too chaotic, I'm going to build a temporal loom. So this is the temporal loom, and well, let's call this step 1, and this is step 2. So Kang builds the temporal loom so the branches can't really spread anymore. This is the sacred timeline. But at the end of Loki season 2, the branches start to expand, and well, the temporal loom would explode if they don't do that. So what happens in episode 5? The temporal loom does explode. So you go back to step 1, right? We are back to basics, baby. But what's happening into back to the basics? I'll tell you. The universes are turning into, well, spaghetti, literally. The question is, why? Because this was universe existing in its natural form. So to say that universes cannot exist in their natural form because everything would turn into spaghetti, it would imply the fact that universes need someone like Loki or something like temporal loom to make sure that things continue to exist. So it would mean that the universe could not have existed in the first place, and if the universe is existing, then you don't need the temporal loom or someone like Loki to make sure that everything keeps on existing. So again, it's that kind of a chicken or egg thing. So yeah, I mean, maybe you guys really love this Ouroboros kind of a thing where chicken and egg is a really big theme in this show, but yeah, I would definitely love some kind of an explanation for this thing. But in any case, this is it for me. I definitely enjoyed the last episode. I definitely think that the last episode was able to save this show. So yeah, I guess I liked the last episode. This is it for me talking about Loki for at least some time to come, because it's going to take some time for Marvel to come up with that third season of Loki, and I'm definitely curious to see where it goes, and I'm sure you guys are as well. So stick around, and maybe someday when season 3 comes out, we can sit and talk about it. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, it's time for a goodbye.